Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Tesla stock was down about 9% on Friday, following what many on Wall Street called a disappointing Robotaxi event. Others, like Dan Ives, actually praises Tesla's event and says this is going to be a game changer when we look back 3 or 4 years in the future. Dan Ives also says in terms of moving Tesla stock higher, the main story really isn't Robotaxi, it's the lower priced Tesla vehicle scheduled for next year. I will play this interview with Dan Ives on CNBC that happened yesterday in just a few moments, but first we have other Tesla stock news to get into. Elon Musk writes on X, "For my time-based predictions, I generally aim for the 50 percentile date, which means that half my predictions will be late and half will be early. The press never mentions the predictions that were early, so it seems like I'm always late. However, it is very rare that a prediction I make does not come true over time." Which, if you've been an investor in Tesla for a while now, you know that is true. And really, as far as Robotaxis, Optimus, all of the other projects Tesla has going on, it's really not a question of if, but when these things actually happen. Sawyer Merritt writes on X, "It sounds like a lot of US-based Cybertruck reservation holders just got invited to order non-foundation Cybertrucks, even some who pre-ordered in 2023. Now, I have no idea what this is implying, if this is a hint at something that may come further down the lines, but as Sawyer Merritt points out, this notification that popped on the phone during Tesla's Cybercab unveiling was titled Plaid Airlines. So, yeah, that could be Tesla's plan later on down the line to create an airline, which honestly, with the difficulty of combustion engines, things failing all of the time, I mean, a battery may be a little safer, I believe. Option activity on Friday in Tesla stock was a little bit more on the negative side than we are used to. You had a positive order value of 40%, 366 different trades, totaling $285 million. Volume on Friday was about 55% to the call side and 45% to the put side. Tesla's short interest of free float sits at 2.68%. You have $17.75 billion currently sold short in Tesla stock, totaling 74.34 million shares. If you take a look at Friday's trading activity, you had about 200,000 shares that were actually sold short on net. So you did have return shares of 773,000 and borrowed shares of 962,000. So that gives you almost 200,000 shares on net sold short. Now, heading into the Robotaxi event, sentiment for Tesla was extremely bullish at 85. Then on Friday, it went to extremely bearish. A massive flip-flop of sentiment we've seen take place on StockTwits, like nothing we've seen before. And message volume went from 71 to 92, which is the highest I have seen message volume from this barometer on StockTwits ever. That means there is like the most amount of people talking about Tesla over here on StockTwits. That's kind of crazy. Participation ratio is high at 55. Now go ahead and take a listen to what Dan Ives just said about the Robotaxi event, and let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section.
Shares of Tesla sinking today after its Robotaxi event underwhelmed investors. Several analyst notes calling it, quote, disappointing. My next guest says he disagrees. Says the event was a, quote, glimpse of the future and the next generation transportation. Joining me now, Post 9's Wedbush's Dan Ives. So you say you left that event in which you were there in person more bullish on this story. How?
I mean, it's all about, now clearly details were obviously scarce, and that's partially why the stock's down. But in terms of Cybercab, in terms of what we saw, what's really going to be over the next, call it 18, 24 months, You look at Optimus in terms of what I view as robotics, where right now there's no value for Optimus in the story. And I think most importantly, in terms of the unsupervised FSD that's going to really be rolled out throughout all the Tesla models, at least California, Texas, into next year. And I think that's why, to me, I'm not talking in the next quarter or two that's moving the needle. But in terms of the next few years, I believe it's a game changer to the broader story.
You saw what might be, not what is, and there really is no real idea of when exactly this is actually going to hit the street. You want to take issue with that?
Well, I'd say first, and look, in terms of price per mile, I think the big focus was, could they get under 50 cents? Musk talked about 20 cents per mile, potentially with taxes 30 to 40 cents. When you look at Cybercab, and clearly the two-person Cybercab, this is something where, as this goes through the next 3 to 4 years, there's no reason this can't ultimately be 10, 15, 20% of overall profits for Tesla as this all ramps up, just given what our view of the overall ride-sharing market and what they could gain, and it comes down to 1.5 billion miles driven.
So the stock had a significant move on anticipation of this event. The event, to many, underwhelmed. Therefore, not justifying the multiple that the stock has expanded to. That's JP Morgan's note today. They see substantial risk to multiple compression after the big rally into what they call a underwhelming day.
I think we look back at last night, 3-4 years from now, as a historical moment. And the reason I say that,
because they held an event and showed you these prototypes?
Sure. I think it's more than prototypes, because ultimately I think the next leg of the story in terms of autonomous, I believe they will be a clear leader in broader autonomous. And I think it shows now, when you look at Cybercab, that's just one piece. I think the other reason the stock's down is Model 2, lower cost vehicle, they didn't show it. I think they're not going to show, we never expected they're going to show that at the event. I still believe that's the 2025 story. So I think broader, you look at, I think, demand stabilizing, just a robust China quarter. I think COGS is going to come down. You got Model 2 or 2.5 in 2025. And then when I look at the future, next 2 or 3 years, you look at Cybercab, you look at Optimus, you look at just some of the parts. I argue the AI story. It is the most undervalued AI name in the market.
I understand, but I'm trying to get my arms around how you're trying to value a stock based on some level of identifiable fundamentals.
Sure.
Are you telling me that you came away from that event last night satisfied with the details that you got?
Yeah, and
because your colleagues at other places were not. Adam Jonas, that's it. Disappointing lack of detail. Tony Sacconaghi, stunningly absent in detail. Wells Fargo, little substance. Are you telling me that you were fulfilled in the detail that you learned?
No, we called out. Details are scarce. That was a negative, and it's a reason to stop. We wanted more details. But to me, with Musk and Tesla, in an event like that, you're maybe not going to get as many details right there as you'd want. But the reason we came out so positive, in terms of the test drives, and if you look at Cybercab, and you look now at production, and this is real. We're not talking prototype. 2026, they start to produce this. We go into next year, this starts to become more and more of a reality, and it all comes down to us, FSD. FSD penetration increases within Tesla. The story massively changes.
When do you need more details? When do you sit back and you say, you know what, I've given the benefit of the doubt on this story, whereas many of the others who cover this stock have not.
Sure.
When do you want details?
Well, I think by later this year, early next year, you basically need to have some details on when the lower cost vehicle is coming out, what production looks like, what, in terms of Cybercab and overall FSD, what the rollout is going to look like throughout 2025. And most importantly, COGS, because the whole goal here is that Tesla's going to be able to decrease COGS significantly, especially with the next gen platform. If that happens, the Nuke numbers into next year or two, I think they're underestimated by 40, 50%. That's what we need to see. If we sit here 6 months from now and they didn't give us that, then at that point, you probably do have to reevaluate things. But I think they have a lot more coming than they ever have in the story if I think back the last few years.
And again, I really like what Dan Ives points out, that Tesla stock's main story for next year was never robotaxis to begin with. The main story for next year was always the lower priced Tesla vehicle. And as I talked about previously, heading into the Robotaxi event, I wasn't expecting a Model 2 unveil like Dan Ives and Wedbush said. They weren't expecting that. But I did acknowledge that markets would kind of assume the Cybercab is the Model 2. The same platform, at least. Now, hopefully the Model 2 is a five-seater, but we'll see. And I talked about this following the event. If you were looking at the event solely for robotaxis, you got just enough details. I mean, it kind of met expectations across the board. The start of robotaxis in Texas and California in 2025, all Teslas being fully autonomous by the end of 2025. Like, that was the expectation. That was what we wanted to hear. I mean, yeah, we didn't get too many details, but if this was the Robotaxi event and not the Model 2 event, the Robotaxi event was just fine. The problem was Wall Street was expecting more details on the lower priced Tesla products. They were expecting details on all kinds of different things that we probably shouldn't have expected in the first place. And that's ultimately why Tesla stock sold off 9%. But the good news is we're going to get a Model 2 event. We're going to get a lower priced Tesla vehicle event. And that is going to be extremely bullish for Tesla stock, especially if Tesla is still on track to launch that lower priced Tesla vehicle. We'll call it the Model 2. It could be called something else by the midpoint of 2025. That is what is going to drive Tesla stock higher next year. FSD is really like a cherry on top of the sundae, if you will. We'll talk about this a little bit more in the next video, how I think this changes the calculus for Tesla into year end and for 2025. As well as that, I will give you a new price target for Tesla stock. With that said, Tesla's total global inventories recently shot up a lot for the Model Y at about 7,800, Model 3 at 4,300, Model X at 3,200, and the Model S at 2,000. Tesla continues to run about 4,000 different ads with Google. Speaking of Google, Google Trends data has really, leveled out around current trend levels. The Cybertruck is seeing the activity actually increasing. The Model Y and the Model 3 are just staying pretty consistent here in the low 30s. Now, as we are now in Q4, we want to see the search trend activity start to pick up a bit. We want to see that seasonal momentum that we tend to get in Q4 start to actually show. The problem with last quarter was the US was weak. The US was pretty damn weak. China was the strong spot. Europe was weak, but Europe deliveries are on the low side anyways. It was really the US that caused a little bit of the disappointment from my perspective. Since the Robotaxi event, you have seen a lot of analysts come out and change price targets and reiterate price targets. So you had Chris Pierce with Needham that reiterated his hold rating with no price target. Mark Delaney with Goldman Sachs reiterated his hold and a $230 price target. Craig Irwin with Roth MKM reiterated his hold and $85 price target. Andrus Shepard with Cantor Fitzgerald reiterated their hold position on Tesla with a $245 price target. And Michael Tyndall changed their recommendation to sell and keep their $124 price target. So since this event, believe it or not, you have not seen the average price target on Tesla fall. You've actually seen it stay exactly the same, with an average price target out of all analyst recommendations of $208.90. 2 cents. So yeah, Tesla stocks sold off 9%. People were disappointed with the event, but did it change the calculus for Tesla? Really for better or for worse? No. I mean, it might have changed things for the better a little bit. We did get some new information, like we know what the vehicle is going to look like, start for robotaxis, at least in a limited capacity in Texas and California next year, fully autonomous vehicles throughout all of the Tesla lineup next year. Like, those were incremental positives. We did get more good news, believe it or not. But with expectations as high as they were, it was seen as a disappointment. But on net, in the reality of what happened, we did not get bad news. We actually got good news. So that makes sense to me why analysts are not lowering nor really raising price targets. The percent of stocks trading above their 50-day moving average on Friday soared up 9.37%. So almost 9.5% of all stocks on Friday broke above their 50-day moving average. You were up 17.2% on this metric. Now you're sitting at about 64% of stocks currently trading above their 50-day moving average. Yeah, that was quite a broadening out that you've seen on Friday. It is also being reported today a new $65 million, 40 megawatt, 80 megawatt hour Tesla Megapack battery energy storage system, a BESS system, has been completed in Anchorage, Alaska. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think about all of this information down below in the comment section. Did you get more bullish or bearish on Tesla long term via the Robotaxi event, or did you not? Did it not really change the calculus for you? Did you buy? Did you sell? Are you holding? Let me know what you are doing as well in your Tesla position as of now. Until the next one, you guys have a great weekend. Stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next one.